Boker Tov, Yom Tov, Zoharim Tovim, and Laila Tov. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Carrie. I hope this finds you well, no matter where you are at. I am going to do another verse through the proof room today. I had a question from one of our family on the stand, and I really liked it. It was a little bit more in depth than some of the verses that our subscriber friend was asking about are going to take a much more in-depth look and is going to take a lot more time. But there was one verse that was mentioned, and when I looked it up, I was really excited about it, shocked, awe, whatever you want to call it, and I wanted to go over that with you today. We are looking at Hebrews chapter 5, verse 8. And though he was the Son, yet from the fear and the sufferings which he sustained, he learned obedience. That's through Etheridge's translation. King James says, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. I get a tickle now. I used to get frustrated, but I'm tickled now when I see some of these things because I know that on the surface level that whatever I'm reading in English isn't what is being penned at all. So let's go ahead and just start taking a look at this and dig it out together. So in looking at what the Peshitta is saying through definitions of these words, the very first word is has a kaf dalet, and we have a vav connected to it, which would be and though, or when, after, while, and where. But this also, when you take a look at the letters, we can see that with the vav in front, and this being something added to the prefix, it has to do with Mother's teaching, which is then connected to the Golden Rule. And this is letting us know that we've connected to Mother through her teachings, and therefore, it means we're humble and we're teachable, and that we are willing to empty our cup and fill it back up through grasping a hold of the sacred languages that bring revelation. I'm giving you some of the interpretations through the letters as I speak, and eventually when we do classes it'll make more sense. So just listen through your spirit. That would be helpful. So we connect in humility and teachability to Mother, where we are choosing to grasp a hold of the power that is found within the languages, the words that bring forth revelation, that we are choosing to yoke and tame ourselves to, which is the door to our inner man that will bring forth a revelation from a deep well within that'll deliver us. And what is it delivering us from? Well, our beast ego nature, our lower flesh. So that's how it starts this whole verse out. And the very first word generally will help us with the course of action for the rest of the verse. So again, this is about grasping the power of the languages and going through the door of the inner man, but we have to be humble and teachable at first. That's the most important thing. Then we actually have the word here, which is good, but it's missing a letter. So let me go ahead and bring up this other thing that you can take a look at here. Good and much, and it's supposed to have a tav in it, because what we're seeing right here and what I'm highlighting, this is the root of the word, and then what is written, one is this one over here is how you would speak it, and then this is the actual written form. So it's missing a vav. So he was the good son, but when he came there was no vav. He hadn't connected to his heart. That is really, really important to see. So in the letters themselves, this is talking about wrestling with the snake or with the seraphim messenger while in the basket of the world in the mud, of being able to accept the vav and the crown that connects, or staying and wrestling with the messenger, the burning one that is coming to present to you what you need to build yourself on the inside. The Bet Tav, the two paths of the 22 letters, the path of Mother and the path of Father, that are meant to build love. And this is the good path. But again, in referring to Yeshua, he hadn't had his heart pierced yet. And here we have the word for son. But again, super fascinating to see what this is saying. Because in the language, if we take a look again, bar is sun, but this has an aleph added to it. Now, this is an Aramaic word for sun, but it also means an heir apparent through the throne. But when you layer the Hebrew on top of this is extremely fascinating. This is the Hebrew word that we have gone over many, many times with you in Genesis 1:1 about creating. In the beginning, God created. We have gone over this about in the beginning, choose. And this has to do with, Rashid has to do with the principalities and powers. Well, this word right here, it does mean choose, but it means to shape and create. So this has to do with the sun that is coming to shape and create. But really what it's saying is that this good son that came, who hasn't connected to his heart, is going to be shaped and created. And in Hebrew, bar means to purify, to select, to become pure and innocent. And then we have the added aleph. So the Son is going to be created through a process to comprehend the unified field, which is the Mashiach anointing. I just think that's so fascinating just by looking at it. And then the next one we've shared with you, or I have, is the Aleph Yod Tav. This is the root. But you can see that what has been added to it is the Vav He Yod. Aleph Tav you see all over the place in Hebrew, and it's the first letter of the Hebrew language and the last letter, the first and the last, the beginning and the end, and you would know this as the Alpha and Omega. This is the process of us becoming the strong leaders of the covenant. But when Yeshua came, he gave us something as a gift. This Aleph Tav, which would be written in, well, let's go back into Hebrews or Genesis 1:1 and I'll show you. Right here, Aleph Tav. This is the way you would see it in Hebrew, Aleph Tav. But through what Yeshua has done for us, we now have the Yod, the power that has been given to us on the inside through the divine feminine that he brought to present to us. But he had to come as mother, teaching the divine masculine first, meeting that measure, teaching others to meet that measure, so that that power of the divine feminine, that seed vision, could be placed within. This word, Aleph Yod Tav, comes from Yesh, Yod Shin, which is a being, an entity of substance. So that vision, since the Sheen is not there any longer, means that those who would consume their lower flesh, beast ego nature, would be given the power within them through the sacred languages of light and love, the Aleph through the Tav, so that they could connect. Now this is on the suffix side, so this is through meekness. We had humility here, now we have meekness. Connect to the revelatory teaching of the Father that will bring forth his power. That's a big deal. Then we have min, which is to be from or a part of. But this is the Hebrew word for manna, the living water teachings, mem, that would lead you out of the waters of chaos into the waters of the sealed waters of shalom, of Father's teaching, while you are in your fallen flesh, beast ego nature. That is why we try to bring to you teachings twice a day as manna for you to partake of, so that you have what you need to spiritually hear, so that this can begin to take hold in you. And then we have the word meaning fear, but it also means awe. Now this is why the language is so important for you to take a look at the letters, because just in the surface translation, if this word means fear and awe, what do we have added? Well, the root of it is dalet, het, lamed, and we have the tav aleph added to it. So this means that through the manna, that the good son came, and he was in awe of the covenant of Father and the unified field of oneness in the Mashiach anointing. And how did he find that? He went through the door of his inner self that revealed what he needed to find the covenant that would bring forth life, the covenant of life, by the teaching shepherds of light, which was the letters himself. And many do not know that Yeshua spent time in the Qumran community, and that was where he was instructed, because the Lamed symbol is also the Hebrew word that means to instruct, to teach, and to learn. So it's both. So he was being taught, and he turned around and now became the teacher himself, and he was in awe with this Father's covenant because it was revealed to him. It was revealed to him through the letters of light and love, so he could connect to the revelation. And then it created a new being within him in the unified field, now marked with the covenant of the Father, now no longer part of judgment, exempt from it. And the reason why it was exempt from judgment is because judgment is only pertaining to the system of duality, this or that, black or white, right and wrong, good versus evil. It's in the system of duality there where we judge, and we are only to judge ourselves. So when you have the mark of the Father and you are sealed in the unified field of oneness, you are exempt from judgment. And this is the mark that we are looking for, the mark of the Kayutha in chapter 13 of the book of Revelation, and I've shared that many times before. We are going to go a little deeper here. So we're going to take a look and see what Jastrow has to say on this, because it's fear and awe. And let's see what Jastrow says. Again, this is a dictionary of the Targum, the Talmud, and the Midrashic literature. To worship and to revere. So we have frighten and scare, to cause to fear, but we have to worship and to revere at the same time. Awe-inspiring. So dependent upon where someone is at, they are going to see this differently. And really, what one must understand, that I fully understood, is dependent on where you are at. Just like people are mirrors and reflections for us to see things within us that we project onto other people, the language does the same exact thing. When you are looking at these letters of light and love, they will reflect back to you which is that which is within you. So if you still have a lot of fear, you're going to see this through the lenses of fear. But if you are one that has entered into love and has had more light come into your life, then you're going to see this as awe. So through this process, he was in awe of this covenant of oneness that he was taught, because it was brought forward to him, the revelation of it, and the power that he needed as means and direction so that he too could experience this himself. Then we have that has the meaning of feeling, suffering, experience, affection, passion, and lust. Well, I find that pretty interesting there. It is het sheen. And why I love this in looking at this, this is when you see this. So here's the root, het sheen. And to go on a little bit of an esoteric side, if we had a noon added in front of it, this would be Nakash. This would be the seraphim messenger that came to Adam and Chava in the garden to be able to share these revelatory teachings with them in the school of divinity. And of course, we've shared that many times in the past. And since the noon is not there, with the noon not being there, it means this is a highly spiritual message that is not pertaining to the lower flesh whatsoever. So in humility, we are connecting to that which brings us life. The covenant of fire, the consuming nature of that which is within us that will burn away the fallen flesh to bring us into the unified field of oneness, the thousandfold anointing of the Mashiach. How amazing is that? So again, coming in that place of connecting to Mother in humility and teachability through this process. And again, this word has to do with experience, feeling and experiencing, and it's from both sides. And I have shared before about passion. Well, In the system of duality, love is passionate, so is hate. But in this situation, because it's oneness, what this is saying is that the good son that came, that learned all of this, learned through experience how to bring everything into the unified field of oneness through feeling it and experiencing it. I hope this is bringing forth some greater revelation, because it certainly did for me when I was digging it out. Then we have the word bear, suffer, bear, impose, and afflict. And the root of that is the Semek Bet Lamed. Well, what this did for the process of becoming and creating the good son through the process of the revelation of Father, through the letters of light, the daily manna that brought forth what was needed through experience and feeling it through the whole way and bringing forth awe, is that he now had to bear the um, the burden, if you want to say, of being the door for others. And being the door for others is he would come and begin to open the door of this revelation to them. And how would he do that? Well, he would present, he had been given the ring of authority, the signet ring, the wedding ring, because he had become one, which means he was no longer divided. He had gone through the sacred wedding, uniting his divine masculine and divine feminine together. He was given the sacred ring, the signet ring, the wedding ring, where now he was hedged in, propped up, and supported as he had built himself on the inside through the teachings of light. I find this interesting because this is also a word for heart, but it has to do with the position of being anxious or having terror. And that is also why he came, is he's bearing the burden of bringing this forward to those who were anxious and fearful, that were terrified. But that was so that they could build themselves on the inside and have authority, inside authority over that. And this is also a shortened form of the word husband. So he came as a husband, as a groom, to present this, so that others could become doors, who could also be wed and unified in the sacred wedding, no longer divided, having inside authority as the husbandman who would come. Then we have the word yalaf, which means to teach and to learn. Learn and teach. So the root is Yod Lamed Pei. Very interesting. So in this process, the good son learned it so that he could teach it. And with the dagesh in the pei, it means that his mouth had been pierced. This also means the sword is within the mouth that brings forth the revelation of the Father's teaching. This was the instruction, the power, means, and direction that was given through the letters of light and love as a teaching shepherd that would instruct the way of the sacred languages, the language that brings forth revelation from the mouth that will be revealed. Then we have the word obedience. The root of this is Shema. Those of you who are aware of the Hebrew language understand how important the word Shema is. And it means to hear intelligently with the concept of being obedient to that which you hear. But notice that the tav has been placed within the middle. What is so amazing about this is the good son came. There was no vav in the middle of this. But now, through obedience, through the Shema, which is much more than just the Shema of what is said, Shema Israel, which is spoken every day by those who are part of Judaism. It has the Tav added on the inside. And Tav is spelled through the constituent letters as Tav Vav. It is the covenant, the mark and the sign of the covenant that has been placed within the heart, within the root. And since it has a Vav that you do not see, it means that the heart has been pierced with this covenant. So the process of the good son that came, he now has been pierced within through the covenant. And then the Tav has a dagesh in there, and in some situations that's a double tav, which means the twin covenants that became one, the two that were divided of mother and father that have now become one on the inside. So now look, if you can see, this is so amazing, the words that are formed within this last word. And you would never see this in English because you would just see obedience. The lamed has been added, and so is the mem. The teaching shepherd of light, the letters of light and love, through the process of mother and father, going through the waters of chaos in order to get to the waters of shalom, where you're surrounded, out of, and set above. The fire, the consuming fire, both of these are purification processes. And these two letters are the same vibratory frequency of Shem, those who are of the name. Those who have gone through the living water and the fire to purify themselves, to get rid of their lower beast flesh ego nature so that they could have the covenant of love placed within their root, their being, and connect to source, the spark of life, of source within them. Again, as Tom, we have shared this many times, that this means completion. This is the twin covenants of completion, the Tom, the covenants of the living water teachings. And right here, this is the word that means a witness and a testimony. To become a witness and a testimony from that which he had learned, that he had experienced, that he was in awe of, that he bore the burden to present to others because he was instructed and he was going to teach this revelation so that others could be able to see, have the eyes to see the fountain that was within them by taking the spiritual path that produces heirship and gives a strong base to stand on, the seat of life, connected to the covenant of Father, the sign, signature, frequency change of the unified field of oneness, the Mashiach anointing. This is the same exact suffix that we see on the word Chayutha in Revelation chapter 13, the beast, the Chayutha. So in a way, we can say that the good son that went through the process of creating is part of the Chayutha, because here we have Chay, right here, the life covenant, Utha, the suffix, the power of meekness that comes from the covenant of the Father, his revelation that is revealed, and then when one becomes proficient in it, they are marked with the maturation of the sign signature frequency of that same teaching because they have become it. Then they are sealed in the oneness unified field of the Mashiach anointing. So you can see that is much different, that he didn't have fear and he didn't suffer. He was in awe with what was being presented. He felt it and he experienced it, and he chose to take up the burden of becoming a door. And that is what we are doing, becoming doors for you, as we are the husbands, quite literally with our last name, that are coming to present this information to you so that you can enter into the unified field of oneness and also carry the Mashiach anointing, doing the greater things that we were promised that we would do because we have entered in through the covenant of promise. Shalom, shalom, and namaste.